actually. It's Dustin Brady, but it was a pretty darn good night for him last night. 15 of 31 passing, 244 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns. He also rushed for 59 yards and recovered a fumble on defense. He now has over 1,500 yards passing, as well as 300 yards on the ground, and he's one of the favorites for Player of the Year in the Northern 10, along with some of the boys at Colonel Crawford, but he's a stud, Effie.
Yeah, anytime we've seen a lot of quarterbacks that are dual threats, and right now he is playing well, and that stat line is incredible actually. But the quarterbacks who are also able to 59 yards rushing he had last week is also just as important as the 244 passing. So that's impressive.
Yeah, so our first nominee, Dustin Brady, quarterback of the Wynford Royals, who are the 7th seed, and they will have a bye for the playoffs. Our second nominee, Wilson Frankhouse, who he didn't throw the ball much, but when he did, it mattered. 7 of 13 passing for 168 yards, 2 scores. He also added a great rushing score that you'll see more in depth later in the show, but he's pretty much been the glue that's kept this squad together after a couple tough losses, Kurt.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's not a surprise for anyone who was paying attention last year. He had a huge year for him last year. Has continued that this year. It certainly helped to have number 17 back this year, or this week, I should say. He's a real talented guy, but I mean, Wilson does a good job. I think he does a really good job for him defensively as well.
And I saw him when they played Clear Fork down at the Corral, and he pretty much kept that team in the game. Clear Fork nearly with the upset, but Galion with the double overtime winner. And a major reason of that was because of Wilson Frankhouse, who's had a pretty good season. Now, the Galion Tigers, they seem like they're firing on all cylinders again. You never know, they could make a run deep in the playoffs in their division.
Yeah, and this was a really good win for Galion last night, I thought. I mean, you're playing a Division 7 school, but I mean, still, to get
it's Lucas
headed back in the right direction here come postseason time.
Definitely. Nominee number 3 is from the Mansfield Senior TY Tigers, quarterback Brock Hill, who did it all against Mount Vernon FE. 10 of 15 passing, 130 yards, 2 scores. He also carried the ball for 51 yards. You've seen him a lot this year. Yeah. Just go into depth about him.
Well, I think Brock, the biggest thing that I thought he's improved is his overall decision making. And early on in the season, I thought he forced a lot of things. He forced a lot of throws. But this year, he's gotten, early or later in the season, he's gotten so much better at making better choices. He knows when to put his head down and get yards. He had a good rushing game last night, but he is making quick decisions, and has a knack for making big plays like this one, the pass to Avion Groves. His growth as a first-year starter in that offense has meant everything to that offense that has played a little bit inconsistent at times, but when they have played well, it's been because he's played well. And his overall decision making has gotten a lot better.
Yeah, and slowly but surely this offense starting to get going for the TY Tigers as they go into the playoffs in that first round next week at home. To nominee number 4, and a player who pretty much did all the damage in the second half against Ashland, and that's West Holmes quarterback Peyton McKinnon, who threw for 301 yards, 3 scores, then added 53 rushing yards and 2 more scores as the Knights outscore the Arrows 35-0 in the second half for a statement victory. And Effie, once again, you've seen him in week 1 as he threw all over the Tigers.
Right, and the impressive thing to see is how consistent he is. He's an efficient guy. He actually, I thought, even from game 1, I thought he saw the field better than a lot of quarterbacks that I've seen. And I think with his continual play and being, his team playing well and getting that big win last night was huge. And I think with him as the offensive leader, I think that makes all the difference.
And if there was a time not so long ago when they didn't throw the ball a lot down in Millersburg. They were a wing T team under the Maltriches, and to have a guy back there calling the shots, that makes you pretty dangerous here in week 7 going forward.
Yeah, and to watch him run that offense, and he's got the leverage to either, you can see him making audibles. He's got full control at this stage of the season of that offense, and because of that, they are rolling. They are even different now than they were earlier in the season, and it's because of his passing and his development overall through the season.
And West Holmes, they will open up next week at home against Madison. I believe, wasn't that Madison that had a big rally in the second half, almost defeated West Holmes a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, I believe so. I wasn't there that night, but yeah, they gave them all they wanted.
Our final nominee comes from St. Paul running back Camden Cribbs, who continues to run over Fireland's conference defenses, going for 118 yards on the ground on 24 carries, while adding a score as yet again the Flyers get a piece of the conference championship. And that's pretty much been their mantra, Kurt, for St. Paul, just ground and pound.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's not exactly a well-guarded secret up there. I mean, they have done what they've done for a long, long time, and they've done it very successfully. This year is no different. I mean, it's not unusual to see a St. Paul team hoisting a Firelands Conference championship.
Yeah, and the last couple of years they've had to share it. Last year, I believe, well, they didn't share it. It was actually Western Reserve that won it outright. But this year, they finally get back at that piece with Monroeville and Crestview after falling to Western Reserve again. So St. Paul going into that Division 7 postseason with a bye, but down the road they're going to probably have to face a tough Lucas Cubs squad. So it's going to be interesting to see that bracket, but we'll talk about that more in our final segment of the show. But our final nominee, Camden Cribbs from St. Paul. And those were the Friday Night Phenoms nominations, brought to you by Spherion Mid-Ohio.